on the global platform. We're so glad to have him. I would want to give the whole profile, but Dr. we want to once again appreciate you for creating time to be here.
Thank you.
You have seen what has happened, and of course, Karaoke has engaged quite a number of leaders there. But what also happened today is we saw the new AU chairman take over, of course, President Lourenço of Angola. And someone would ask, is this working to our advantage? Is it giving us a green light in as far as the voting pattern is going? The proceedings that happened the past 2 days thereabout, what would be your general remarks on the pattern or the exercise that's happening in Addis today?
Thank you very much, Anki Doris. First, on a light note, you know the PhD issue has become a little vexed in our country.
Yes.
So you don't flaunt it around very much, regardless. But we know about the issue of AU chair,
yes,
chairperson. It is basically something that migrates from one region to the other. And it's usually very much a predetermined matter that has been usually decided by the regional heads of state and government. And by the time they are getting to Addis, as they have done today, it is more or less a foregone conclusion.
Is it?
As recently as a few days ago, it was public knowledge that João Lourenço was going to become the next AUC chair.
AU chair, actually.
The AU, sorry, the African Union chair.
Yes.
And that whether we talk about whether it's going to favor us or not favor us, it is neither here nor there. It depends on what specific issues we would like to canvass within the union. And within that union, that canvassing will take into account the fact that the African Union, just like all other international forums,
yes,
are basically arenas of international politics, international interests, but people will reflect about those interests from the perspective of national self-interest. So it will depend on specific agendas that are on the table within the AU space.
Speaking of agendas, and I know that it is public knowledge right now what Raila Odinga presented as his agenda for the African continent. And we've also had the AU chairperson now, the new AU chairperson, speaking on a number of things, including, you know, inclusion, financial autonomy, some of which align with Raila Odinga's manifesto. Perhaps we pick up on that, even as the voting commences, that then he would be against these particular two candidates, stand out as a candidate that would convince the heads of state this afternoon to vote him in. I'm referring to what he presented as his strong manifesto and vision for Africa.
For a start, they have their own blueprint, which was adopted in the year 2013, and that is the Agenda 2063. And so one must begin from that Agenda 2063, and it has got some very specific expectations that have been put there on, number one, making Africa's voice loud and clear within other international fora. They are talking about inclusive development that leaves nobody behind. Whether that is realizable or not is another question. They are talking especially about inclusion of women and the girl child. They are talking about education. They are talking about health issues. They are talking about infrastructural development. And when you turn to the three candidates, you will discover that they are basically saying the same thing in different idiom, but essentially the same. And therefore, one starts thinking that it may not be so much a question of what specific agenda an individual has presented, but more of regional interests, more of the interests of specific countries, and how much they have been able to align and harmonize them with other partner states' interests, and hence, therefore, how they're going to vote. Beyond that, I would only add that besides the AUC chair's office, there are other offices that are also being competed for, and to a significant extent, it also becomes a question of horse trading in the context of the bigger picture.
And I want to talk to Professor Peter Kagwanja, who has just made his way in studio. But before that, I know we had a conversation with Professor, and I want to bring this aspect up here today. Richard Randriamandrato of Madagascar is one of the candidates. We have Mohamed Ali Yusuf of Djibouti, who for the longest time a number of analysts have put in as a main threat.
The upper hand.
Yeah, given an upper hand, yes. But one of the comments by Professor Peter Kagwanja here in our earlier conversation is that the age factor would not work in the best way for Raila Odinga's candidature. And here, I want you to speak before he speaks on that matter. 20 years, they're about difference. Is the age factor really a matter of concern, Dr. Harry?
It can be fairly significant. Significant in the sense that this is not a symbolic office. It is a hands-on office. It's an executive office that requires a lot of energy, a lot of physical energy, a lot of intellectual energy. And it's part of the fact that you will be working with other commissioners. You've got to be yourself intellectually alert, to have the essential celerity of mind and the gift of presence to be there, to be driving the processes. So there are going to be these other factors. And going with that age factor will also be the consideration of why it is that Kenya is sponsoring a candidate for the AUC chair, and why this particular candidate, because they will be asking that why is Kenya bringing an octogenarian into this very heavy-laden arena. And turns out that perhaps we are trying to migrate and relocate our own domestic conflicts and competitions into some other space, that we are trying to jettison and catapult the Honorable Raila Odinga to Addis Ababa to possibly create a free and easy lay of land for the current president in the local politics. Maybe it is a path to appeasement. And it could be a path to neutralization of the political opposition. It could be a path to the creation of a hegemony within the Kenyan state. And if such things get into the mind of those who will be voting, they may not look too kindly on the Kenyan candidature, I think.
All right, we might as well sail through there. We do not know how this conversation will go until 5 p.m. But let's hear from Professor Peter Kagwanja, the CEO, Africa Policy Institute. It's very good to have you yet again.
Thank you, Anki.
And I wanted to pick it from, your general view of the happenings since we last spoke. The campaign behind former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, as assured by Professor Midamba, who's about to just step in shortly. He said it was very, rigorous, very calculated, very strategic, differently from what we saw happening during Amina's time. And he really did assure Kenyans that they are very, very positive that this time, this particular position is coming back home. What are your opening remarks this afternoon?
Well, definitely as a Kenyan, you'd want to wish Raila Odinga all the best in terms of the campaign and what he's doing. So definitely, you would want to side with your fellow Kenyan. It is a patriotic thing to do. It is camaraderie. I have personally, for a long time, been aligned to Azimio. So just as opening remarks, I think that is what one would wish. So we wish him all the best. But that said, then, you have another duty as an intellectual, to just speak nothing but the truth, the way you know it and the way you hear about it. First and foremost, I think it was the long thing for Raila to decide, if he is the one who decided to go to the AU for this particular seat. Because when you are applying for a job, and Anki, I'm sure you are going to find yourself at 80 and you want to apply for a job in KTN as a broadcaster, then it's going to be very difficult.
I could be a senior. I could be a senior.
Yes, but this is a
anchor at the time.
This is job that is cut and dry. It is a job which has attracted people. The oldest person we've had been Dlamini Zuma, who was in the 60s, and the oldest person, apart from Raila, who is applying now, is Richard Mandrato from Madagascar.
Yes.
And he's 65, or turning 65. Therefore, I think, however you want to say it, and I put this in very stark terms, the age is a huge disadvantage for Raila, huge. I remember the average age of the people you're finding in Addis Ababa is 63 years. That is the average age of African leaders. The average age of you and me as an African is 19.2. So Africa is a young continent,
yes.
Which is really growing, and therefore it looks like Kenya is moving backward rather than forward, and that's a problem. So age is a factor, however you want to look at it, and this is a term where you're supposed to move for 4 years, so you'll be 84, plus you are supposed to take 2 terms, 88. Now remember also, and I'm sure you have watched the first the first session of the AU presentation, that the AU is a very structured organization, perhaps more structured than the United Nations. We have at the top the real leader of the continent, elected once a year. We have seen the exit of the Mauritania president, who was the president of Africa, and the entry of the one from Angola, who is now the current president.
Yes.
Now, below him is a council of ministers. And these are the ones who meet twice a year to make decisions. Below that are the permanent representatives in Addis Ababa, who represent their own countries. And they are not under the AU, they are simply the owners of the AU. Then fourth in the tier is now where the secretariat come. And the secretariat is the one that Raila wants to head. So it is good for Kenyans to see, so that we had Amina, we have now Raila, next time possibly we are going to have Muruka and somebody else.
Yeah.
So lessons we learn from our own experiences are very, very important. And sometimes lessons are bitter.
Okay.
Like this one is a very bitter pill. Because those of us who know Raila know that he's a very active person, very agile. But age will always slow you down. And not age, if this was a ceremonial position, I had Barack Muruka says it, if this was a ceremonial job, like the one now has been given to the president of Angola, Raila would make it very, very comfortably. But now, this is a job that he does not even have to, remember he's an ex-officio. He's not even the AU, he's an ex-officio. Because that job is a job. And it is a job that you fight for. That's why we have interviews. There was a panel of eminent Africans, including the Ethiopian and Angolan and somebody else, which was interviewing them. So this is a job. It is not anything else. And that said then, I think we as Kenyans, as I wish Raila Odinga all the best, us as Kenyans need to go back. And I say it, and I want to repeat it here. Raila did not jump. He was pushed. I think that's something we, as Kenyans we need to be comfortable with. That the Raila I know, who I have served in different capacities, cannot make that kind of a decision. Going for a job of 50 years when he is 80, no, I don't think so.
Even though we have him on record speaking for himself, you are still insisting that
yes,
he did not want to do this.
I insist.
Okay, now I want to appreciate Professor Noah Midamba, who is the Senior Associate Global Center for Policy Strategy and also now the Chairman, Moi University Council. Professor, it's very good to have you.
Good to have you, Ogni.
I want to come to you shortly, but I know that Dr. Barak just wanted to shortly or briefly respond to something that Professor Kagwanja said. If you do have any reactions in that regard, and then we can hear the remarks of Professor Midamba, who has just joined us this afternoon.
I think basically Professor Kagwanja is spot on. One has got to appreciate the context out of which the Raila Odinga candidacy arose. It was during the heyday of the Maandamano, and the Maandamanos, as we are aware, were causing quite some jitters within the country and within the region. We are aware that the people who are going to the streets with the sufurias were waiting for the next set of instructions, when suddenly the Right Honorable Raila Odinga materialized from his residence with the retired Nigerian president, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, and he was suddenly announcing that he was going to run for office within the African Union. And we are aware that at that point in time, the Honorable Obasanjo was actually trying to play a conciliatory role between Odinga and President William Ruto. And so suddenly, figuratively speaking, the guns fell silent, and Mr. Odinga was suddenly being glorified by people who had been vilifying him, people who had said some of the most pejorative things about him, and they have sustained that praise in superlatives. And basically, I would insist on building upon what Professor Kagwanja has said, that there's a sense in which you are removing him from the political arena. You are not doing it for any altruistic or any patriotic reasons. You are thinking that this person is a thorn in the flesh, and you need to remove that thorn from the flesh.
We'll be looking at that analysis even locally. But Professor Noah Midamba, even as we begin the conversation, with your remarks, I'm reminded of the words of, Kwame Nkrumah. It's very interesting what he said. He said, and I think this was when he was speaking in the conference speech he delivered in Accra, I think in 1960. He said, "We face neither east nor west. We face forward." All right, so it's neither east nor west, but forward. And when you hear the words of Dr. Barak Muluka, and they're saying, let us remember where it started, all right, even as we anticipate the voting, what would be your analysis of the current happenings locally and at the Addis Ababa?
Okni, I'm one of those people who have traveled more in this world than most Kenya will ever dream. I live in the United States for 40 years. I understand where the world is now and the trend we are taking. I'm also really culturated on the African culture. My father was a really good man, and he coached me about the values of African culture. I disagree with the two of my colleagues that are respected very much. We have reached a point where there is a serious crisis in the world. And the crisis is created by a man called Trump. changing the concept of democracy the way we know it, threatening to grab countries by force, like it was late 1800 and 1900. And Africa is the most volatile, the most vulnerable of all. You can go to DRC Congo by force, literally, and take it over and extract any mineral that you want instead of negotiating with Congolese. So that can happen. And South Africa, which was really supposed to be our hope for manufacturing, our hope for industrial planning, is falling apart. South Africa is left. Who is the person that most desirable leaders which is needed right now? That leader is Raila Amolo Odinga. And I'm saying this, I'm not sold or affiliated to any political group or bought by money. I am my own man, and I'm speaking my own mind. The team that Kenya has assembled is a team I've not seen happen in Kenya. And this team, including Ambassador Kipkorir, Ambassador Odembo, these are both senior, highly committed. And then President Ruto is playing a very positive role in this strategy. President Uhuru, now President Ruto, is doing that. And then Mudavadi, who's been around for a long time, is very active. And so these Kenyans have created what I call a formidable team, which include the surgical team, almost the conqueror, strike team, and then the harmonizing team. I happened to be called and became part of the group through Global Center for Policy and Strategy. We examined the strategies they have, we examined what they have accomplished, and we examined where we need to go. And these people have followed the strategy by letter to where we are right now. I have Ethiopians so vibrant and so excited right now for Raila. And the biggest problem we have is an internal problem, which is caused by political interest that we have in Kenya. What's it called? Dirty laundry. That's what we're displaying in the continent, and it is really, really unfortunate.
It is really, really unfortunate.
Yes.
And speaking of that.
Correct. Okay, let me end by saying age is not a matter. How old is Trump? How old was Joe Biden? How old was Mandela? So this is the time that we need somebody that can call kids together and say, young people, we have a big problem. And you need to come together so that we can focus on the need of the African continent. That's where I'm coming from.
All right, I want to hear from Professor Kagwanja, because even as we're speaking, we're anticipating that the voting will take place any time from now. It might be underway. Essentially, our team is on the ground, and we will be bringing you the coverage. But remember, it's a closed door session. But we have Daniel Kariuki there, who will give us any information if there is need to. But remember, it's a closed door meeting. But speaking of voting, remember, you said that it's a secret ballot, for sure. So endorsement doesn't really translate to voting. However, from what Professor Noah Midamba is saying, a lot has been done. Even if I quote Musalia Mudavadi, who is the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, he told the Standard, and I quote, that we are confident Raila has traversed 44 to 45 countries, and of course, President Ruto has engaged all the leaders across Africa, and Musalia Mudavadi has equally played a role with the counterparts of ministers of foreign affairs, and we are confident that the extensive campaigning will yield results. We are hoping that about 33 votes out of the 49 go to Raila Odinga, and a number of people in his team, or Kenya's team, are confident that we are taking this home. Now let's look at the voting pattern. And somebody was suggesting in our earlier panel that they anticipate this would be just as transparent and open so that we know which country has voted for whom, and even moving forward.
Let me first of all say, my brother Noah And I don't want to talk ill of him. He has promised me a trip to Homa Bay.
And the cow?
Where he has.
He is actually going to give me a cow.
No, that's okay. The cow, I said. And I've promised so many cows that if Raila wins, I'll be bankrupt. But that's okay. I'm ready to go that way. Now, the point is this. The African Union Commission seat does not require a strong strategy. Because there's no strategy. It's not like the UN Security Council seat, which we were fighting for. Because the UN Security Council seat had the whole world, and the whole world has to vote for you. So that was really huge. You remember Uhuru Kenyatta traversing the West Indies or the Caribbean, and people talking about him looking for other stuff rather than the vote. But it's the vote we wanted. That's how serious it was. In this one, we're talking about 49 countries. Because you knew 6 of them are disqualified by the virtue of having a course. So it's 49 countries we are talking about. And these 49 countries, it's a question of visiting them. You can visit all of them. In any case, what campaign would be doing? So this campaign was Raila Odinga's only. The strategic part is the president and his office. Because he is only one, apart from Raila Odinga, by virtue of Raila Odinga being announced as a candidate, every head of state is supposed to give him audience, just to hear what he says. So he doesn't have to do much. The audience will be there. And what do you do? Countries will vote according to their interests.
Okay.
They will not vote according to the way they were persuaded, because and they are not part of a constituency. So there's a problem here. The problem is that we are reading this election through the prisms of our own internal elections, where I am hearing Raila Odinga has a manifesto. A CEO of a company will not be hired with a manifesto, because you're not going to overhaul other people's company. You're just being hired to help them function well, right? And on top of him is President William Ruto, who is the chair of the AU institutional reform team. So the first person he will meet is, if he wins, it will be Ruto himself, to ask him, what do I do? What have you decided? So that I implement. In short, I have said this, and somebody would think I'm arrogant. This position is simply a position of a CEO, put in a better way. It is a position of the way we describe them. He's not the chairman, is not the director of the committee, of a council. You're simply a hero of wood and drawer of water in a company. Basically, that's it. That's it, because you are head of a secretariat. So I like the way Kenyans like dramatizing things and blowing things out of proportion. Raila Odinga is going for a subordinate position of a CEO of an established company. You have seen the election of the owners of the company, from president to president. Now we have a new leader of Africa, who is the president of Angola.
Yes.
That's the new leader. Under him, I said, are the ministers. Now, these heads of states are now in a retreat to recruit their CEO, the person who will be a note taker for them. This is a phrase I borrowed from my Chadian intellectual, Usman, who told me just yesterday, and actually wrote to me, you Kenyans, are you for real? That's what he asked me. Are you for real?
Is it?
That you are making, when he heard that we have about over 100 and plus MPs. in Addis Ababa, who will not even get near the meeting place, because you cannot process cards for those people to enter a meeting. For those of us who have been there for over now 30 years, going to the AU, even to process the entry pass, require your country. No country will be allowed for that. And now, even to enter into some other places, you need more than that. So let me then answer your question as you asked. What are the numbers like? Because I hear people are saying, oh, we have 33 votes, others saying we have 49 votes. It's good PR, I think. It's good PR. But beyond PR, what is the reality on the ground? SADC is now busy campaigning. And not really campaigning, it's whipping its members to line to see who will agree and who will disagree with their agreement of August 2024. The agreement in Harare was that whatever a senior post that a SADC member will take, they will all back that. If it's a commission, they will back that. It's the topmost. If it is the CEO, as we're calling him, then they will go for that. If it's a deputy, they will go for that. They have resolved that they are going for the top seat. So those are 16 votes out.
You're assuming if they vote in that line?
No. Because
Professor,
this is not voting.
Professor,
yes.
And even as we have heard from other, analysts, and of course I appreciate what you have said, is you can whip, a bloc to, vote in a certain direction, but the heads of state, just like Daktari put it, will vote in line with their interests. So let me hear from Dr. Barak. In that regard, because people are saying if the SADC team really succeeds and the 16 votes go that direction, there's also the argument around, if Madagascar is surely supposed to be in this race. For that matter, there are others who feel it is in the wrong place. There's some element of, and in fact, one of the officials from Kenya said they're treating this as not very official. That particular statement from SADC, they are questioning its official nature.
Can I answer
to this
that?
point?
Let's come in at this point. And I'd like to preface my remarks with the observation that Professor Noah Midamba starts from a wrong place. He comes with what is basically a logical fallacy, that because I have traveled here and I have traveled there and I have lived here for so many years, that take my word for it. In philosophy, it's called a varicundium fallacy. That alone does not make your argument valid. And of course, we have traveled a little bit unbeknown to him, where we have not traveled physically. We have traveled vicariously, and so we are informed about global and continental affairs. Said and done, Professor Peter Kagwanja is beginning to crunch the numbers. He crunches them behind the fact and reality that, number one, as Kenyans, we wish Raila Odinga the very best. We would like to see him win. And secondly, beyond that, we must reckon with the realities on the ground. Third, that the realities on the ground indicate that SADC has got a bond, and that out of that bond, they are expected to vote in a given way, that the Kenyan member of parliament whom we have seen there does not have the instruments of gauging the authenticity or lack of it in the correspondence that has been given. Fourth, that the milling around of crowds within the corridors of the Africa Conference Center in Addis Ababa does not change anything. This is not football where you are sending a crowd of people to go and give Harambee Stars moral support, that you are being there and your decibels count for nothing. That next to that, if SADC votes the way they have instructed themselves to vote, then out of 49, you have got 33 left. Out of those 33, there are other factors that come into the picture. Those factors include things like language issues. The Francophones, who are about 21, with just about 2 of them replicated in SADC, will also most probably vote in a given way.
Yes.
And after that, there's the question of religion and other affiliations coming in. And I said earlier on, and I restate, that I wish my brother Raila Odinga the very best. It's the best thing for us to do as Kenyans. It's about patriotism. And that beyond that, we must separate our wishful thinking from the reality on the ground. It should not surprise us that when it gets to the round of 2, we may not be featured anywhere.
Interesting, because those particular rounds, and let me just stick with you, Dr. Barak, so that we walk the Kenyan, just to be familiar with what is going to be happening at closed doors. It's not just, like you said, we're likening to local politics, like the manifestos. There are rounds of voting that will be happening in that particular, closed door. And I know Professor Midamba will add to that as well. But here we go. First round, second round, third round. It could go all the way to the fifth round. Is it, Dr. Barak?
Even seven.
Even seventh.
Yeah.
In fact, some are saying that we might even have to take a break if need be.
Yeah, and the break could take as long as even
1 year.
1 year. Yeah, you go back, it is deadlocked. Then you say, let us go back to factory settings. We will return.
Okay, let me say this. These are two of my friends that I have very deep respect for.
Yes.
They have the opinion, I have my opinion.
Yes.
The opinions are based on facts. My opinions are also based on facts. At this point, I would say, like America say, it's not over until the fat lady sing. You get me?
All right.
It is not over until the fat lady sing. That is when you announce the result. You have it on your hand. That's what America say, and it's always true. So we cannot celebrate, until that's happened. The group on the hallway in Addis Ababa are those people who are really excited about the candidacy of Raila Odinga. They're not only Kenyans, they're Ethiopians, they're Somalia. They're from all over Africa who have assembled there. I'm in touch with quite a number of people because I teach class tomorrow on Sunday. That has 75 students from throughout 16 African countries. Some of those are my students who have traveled with their own resources to see to it that Raila Odinga win this seat. They're not Kenyans. They're Ivorians. They're Nigerians. They're Ghanaians. They're Zimbabweans. And here's the point, what I want to bring up. This SADC thing that just happened was not official.
It was not official.
It was not sanctioned by the members.
Okay.
It came from nowhere. And the point is, Tanzania is a part of East Africa.
Yes.
And also is a member of SADC. Madagascar is also part of East Africa and is also a member of SADC. This round of African election is focused on East Africa. We go from region to region.
Right.
And so it will be dramatic because it's not SADC region. It will be dramatic to see complete shift from the trend which is already established by Africans and not respecting that trend. It is East Africa this time. Next time, I don't think it's SADC, maybe it's North. Peter may correct that. But so the African team that assembled together, the wise men, consider that we need to be able to rotate leaders from each region so that Africa is self-represented. And so the people who are saying hurrah, all of a sudden we have SADC, they're the one that was working on the other candidate, and the other candidate is not making it, okay? So that now they're shifting to Madagascar candidate. I was in America. We're campaigning for Barack Obama.
All right.
And some of the Kenya think that is a Luo. So they're not voting for him because he's a Luo. The result was when Barack became the president, he's president of America, not Kenya.
Okay.
He's not a Luo, and it does not belong to any ethnic group in Kenya. So what I'm saying is let us refrain from washing our dirty laundry in the eyes of the world. The message is going around Africa. People are saying coming from Gen Zs. I taught most of Gen Zs. I know who they are.
Okay.
Don't speak for them. Let these young, very bright people speak for themselves. and deal with yourself when we are now dealing with the major national scene. The major question we need to ask, if Raila Odinga becomes chairman of OAU, how will he be referred in the world, in the continent? A Kenyan candidate, he will not be referred to like anything else. And then we are now facing a situation where Africa need to sit in the Permanent Security Council of the United States. Who is better poised to make sure that's happening? All
right. And I want to hear from Professor Kagwanja, but allow me to just show you the candidates real quick as we also await Daniel Kariuki, Nyongesa, and Brian to give us updates right from Addis. But here is a bit of the profiles of the candidates. There's three of them right now that are facing off. And Richard Randriamandrato is a former Foreign Affairs Minister of Madagascar, serving from 2019 to 2021. He has a background in diplomacy and economics. He previously served as a director of the cabinet in the Foreign Affairs Ministry from December 2000. Now, Randriamandrato also served in international organizations such as the African Union and the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. Recently, members of the Southern Africa Development Community were asked to vote him in the AUC chairman-person election, which takes place today. Let me also give you a quick and a brief profile of Mohamed Ali Yusuf of Djibouti. Now, Mohamed Ali Yusuf is Djibouti's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. He has held the position since 2005 and is banking on his experience in diplomacy, spanning more than 30 years, to steer him to victory in the race to be the AUC chairperson. Now, he began his diplomatic career at Djibouti's Foreign Affairs Ministry in 1993, serving as a deputy director of international organizations, later becoming the director of the Arab world. In 1997, he was appointed Djibouti's ambassador to Egypt and the permanent representative to the League of African States, as well as non-resident ambassador to Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, Syria, and Turkey. In 2001, Yusuf was appointed Minister Delegate for International Cooperation at the Foreign Affairs Ministry, rising to lead the ministry 4 years later. The Djibouti's priority areas, including strengthening regional integration and promoting sustainable solutions, among others. Now, finally, Raila Odinga is a former Prime Minister of Kenya and has served in other ministerial capacities. Born to Kenya's first Vice President Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Raila grew up in a political family that largely shaped his ideals, or ideas, if you like. Now, he was unsuccessfully sought the presidency 5 times. Rather, he has unsuccessfully sought the presidency 5 times in 2007, 1997, 2013, 2017, and 2022. But he's also suffered detention without trial for 8 years over his alleged role in attempted coup of 1982. He joined elective politics in 1992, winning the Langata parliamentary seat, serving until 2013. Well, he has been among the most consequential politicians in Kenya for more than 4 decades, playing a part in advocating constitutional reforms. He actively participated in Kenya's second liberation struggle in the 1980s and early 1990s, and was among those who led campaigns for Kenya's constitution, regarded as one of the world's most progressive. But also remember, he's also served as a minister in different capacities through his political journey in Kenya. And we also have those positions, and of course, just to give you that, of course, the previous AUC chairpersons, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, who is, of course, going to be handing over to the winner. And he served from March 2017 to now present, and that is Chad Prime Minister. But we also have the previous AUC chairpersons, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, from 2012 to 2017. She's the first woman to lead AUC and was former South African minister. Now, we continue to give you these details so that you're just in line with what exactly we're looking at. Previous AUC chairpersons, also we have Jean Ping, from 2008 to 2012, and he is from Gabon, among others. Just sharing with you the previous, of course, leaders who held this position. Alpha Omar Konare from 2003 to 2008, and he was from, or he is rather, from Mali. And still in that regard, we also had this position prior held by Amara Essi from 2002 to 2003 rather, and he is from Cote d'Ivoire. Now that's what we mean. It's been in a rotation, and this time it's coming to the east. And like I just shared the profiles and those who are predecessors to whoever will be taking over the AUC chairman position. Let me hear from Professor Kagwanja, because what Professor Midamba is saying is let us avoid washing dirty laundry, all right, in public, and that this is being watched across the globe. But you have also said today, if I give you the title of a truthful man, that it is good to bring in your intellectual capacity as well, as much as you're supporting Raila Odinga. So what would it mean for the political landscape in Kenya? Because once he takes this position, he's totally out of local politics.
I've said this before, Anki, and it is important to really underline this.
Yes.
The language of our dirty linen in public is completely out of place, unless you don't know what spaces we are navigating. I have spent more years working outside Kenya, in other African countries than in Kenya.
Okay.
And in many cases, I have traveled as a South African. In fact, ironically, when I came to Kenya for the first time, they used to refer me to as the professor from South Africa. Muruka was here, the professor from South Africa who had joined the AU. Why? Because that was my home. And many of us have come to believe in a more superior space to our local parochial national space called Kenya. I believe more in Africa than I believe in Kenya. Why? Because the moment we had our national madness in 2007, 2008, it is this elevated space that came to our rescue, brought in Kofi Annan, brought Mahama and others to bring sobriety to our deranged minds. And they gave us our country back and then went back. Now we are paying back to the Africans. And what are we paying them with? This is where the debate is. So we are not watching our dirty line, and I'm not beholden to either Raila Odinga or Yusuf or Henry, Richard of Madagascar. They are all, in this particular age, we are Africans.
Okay.
We are Africans. So anybody telling you that you are not supporting your Kenyan candidate or this, that's why we have Mujadara Africa. Mujadara Africa is that Raila will talk to the Africans, not to the Kenyans. Right? Mujadara Africa is about, Yusuf talking to Africans, not to Burundians, Djiboutians. So in other words, that language that we are washing our dirty linen in public is completely out of place and out of order. And I mean it. Unless you are not a Pan-Africanist. Because one day, there is going to be Kenya, but as a province of Africa. What are you going to do with that? Because that is the dream of Kwame Nkrumah. That's the dream of, Muammar Gaddafi. That's the dream of very many Africans, that one day Africa will abolish these boundaries the way we know them and become Africans. That's the Pan-African dream. So when somebody tells you that I'm a Pan-Africanist, they literally mean that they see the oneness of Africa. The way we talk about the United States of America, those days Soviet Republic, now we are talking about China, and now we are talking about the United States of Africa. So ideologically, you must be able to translate from Kenya to Africa. And we are now trying to say we are giving Raila to Kenya to serve.
All right, allow me to interject, Professor.
Yes, please,
you will continue because I want to also hear from Dr. Barrow.
Yeah, but I've not
just allow me to just pick up from what you said, that you are looking at this in a larger picture, Pan-Africanism, and that it's not all about Kenya.
No.
That we are but just addressing Africa, Africa issues, right? But for the sake of the viewer and myself, isn't there any little benefit whatsoever that Kenya would get, all right? Because you've had the arguments that Kenya is a big brother, Kenya is aggressive, Kenya would walk into a room and, And I want to understand, because you have first called this position quite, when you call it quote unquote, according to you, subordinate. But now again, someone would challenge and say, all right, so are you trying to say there would be no benefit whatsoever for the country if Raila Odinga cleans the seat? You see no change in litmus paper whatsoever with this position coming to Kenya?
I don't look at it from that parochial mercantilist
But is there
approach.
a benefit? There's
a mercantile approach. Raila will get 169,000 votes. $1,000 shillings per year. It's a mercantilist thing. What is in it for us? What is it? This is Dukawara kind of mentality.
Okay.
It is really wrong. We are contributing the best to Africa. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
All right.
Not counting how many dollars is going to come to us. It's so parochial, so mediocre to think about Raila as a benefit. We're not exporting, we're not expecting labor. Because if that is the way, I would have started by saying we need to push him so that we can bring those 169,000 plus dollars to this country, because that will be a foreign exchange coming to us, replacing the coffee that is not giving us. But I would take a serious, commercial, economic, Dukawara kind of mindset and argue that way.
All right.
For us, we are exporting values, and this is where we have a problem with Kenya's choices, and that's why I started by exonerating Raila Odinga, because I know him. He didn't jump; he was pushed. Until he come to me and tell me, Professor, I jumped. And then we have a debate with him. How did you make these choices? They look very awkward. They are not like the ones we have made before. We have sat and did the strategies about this Katiba with him. Okay? So you are talking about a person you know. Therefore, I am saying it is possible that he did not jump, he was pushed, but he is already in it. We have congratulated him, and we have wished him all the best, but those are wishes.
Congratulated.
Yes, we have congratulated him if he wins, but we are wishing him all the best.
Okay.
In this case, SADC letter. The SADC letter is authentic. I have consulted for SADC.
Okay.
No, listen.
Yes.
It is not a letter that came yesterday. On August 2024, when the candidates were returning their papers, SADC sat as a council of ministers in Harare, Zimbabwe, and made a resolution.
All right.
This letter was not saying anything new. It was reminding members of the commitment they gave in Harare, that we are going to back our own. And therefore, they called upon members to vote for Richard, because he's the closest they have from the region. Remember, if this candidate came from DRC, he would be a dual candidate from East Africa and also from Southern Africa.
Right.
If it came from Tanzania, if it was Jakaya Kikwete, Jakaya Kikwete would have come from East Africa and also from Southern Africa. Richard also come from Southern Africa and also Eastern Africa, because of the overlapping mandates. And therefore, SADC is supporting him as an Eastern African candidate who is also in SADC.
Okay.
And they have said they are whipping. They are not requesting members. They are whipping, reminding members of their obligation that the 16 of them have to give to. That's it.
To Richard. Now, we will follow closely how that voting process goes. Remember, I'm still here in studio with Professor Midamba, Dr. Barak Muluka, and Professor Peter Kagwanja. But like we said,